Inside a dimly lit house, tension hung thick in the air as a ruthless group of thugs terrorized an innocent family. The father, trembling, huddled over his wife, trying to protect her from the violence. The intruders were relentless, demanding repayment for a debt that seemed impossible to settle. Their cruelty knew no bounds as they prepared to torture the family, bringing a hot iron dangerously close to them. The father, with desperation in every movement, tried to reason with the thugs. His face was pale, drenched in sweat, as he attempted to bargain for more time. But the gang's leader, cold and devoid of compassion, showed no mercy at all. His eyes narrowed down with disdain as he moved toward the father, taking hold of his neck. He brought the iron closer, the heat of it searing through the tense atmosphere, making the family's fate seem inevitable. For the gang, this wasn't just about money, it was about teaching a cruel lesson. The leader's grip tightened as he moved with deliberate malice, intent on making the family feel the same pain that others had suffered when they couldn't get their debts paid. Of course, the father, powerless, could only brace for the agony that awaited him and his loved ones. Just as the gang leader was about to press a scorching iron against the father, his sharp eyes noticed something, a flicker of movement from the wife. She was nervously clutching her phone. Her fingers were trembling as they tapped against the screen. Suspicion crept across the leader's face, and with a swift, cruel motion, he snatched the phone out of her hand, assuming she was trying to call the authorities. His voice dripped with mockery as he sneered, certain she was attempting to reach for help, but as his gaze fell on the screen, his expression shifted. It wasn't the police she was contacting, it was their son. Her message, hastily typed, was a warning to him, pleading for him to stay away, to not come home. The leader's sneer faltered momentarily, but then a chilling smile curled across his lips. A low, dark chuckle escaped him as he considered the new information. Instead of torturing their parents, he saw a far more sinister option, beating up the son, their pride and joy, and it seemed much more satisfying. The gang leader's laughter filled the room, a sound heavy with malice. The threat of violence against their son struck the parents like a hammer, and terror washed over them. Panic twisted their faces as they desperately pleaded for mercy, their voices raw with fear, but their cries fell on deaf ears. The leader's sneer deepened as he coldly ordered his men to silence them. Without hesitation, the gang members bound the parents with rough ropes, gagging them to stifle any further pleas. Their muffled voices were swallowed by the oppressive silence of the room. Meanwhile, their son, unaware of the danger that awaited him, approached the house. His steps quickened as he reached the front door, a sense of unease gnawing at him from the inside. Inside of the house, the gang leader listened intently, a cruel grin spreading across his face as he heard the footsteps from outside. The tension in the room thickened even more, and he signaled his crew with a sinister gleam in his eye. The boy had arrived, just as they had hoped. The son knocked on the door, but only silence greeted him. His frown deepened as he noticed something was definitely off. The door swung open slightly, and a chill ran down his spine. Cautiously, he called out to his parents, but the house remained eerily quiet. Unease settled over him as he stepped inside, carefully removing his shoes, unaware of the nightmare lurking just beyond. From behind her gag, the mother desperately tried to plead, her muffled voice barely escaping as she silently begged for her son's safety. But her faint cries could not reach him, her panic and fear trapped in the air of the dimly lit room. Unaware of the lurking danger, the son stepped further into the house, his voice calm and steady, echoed through the unnerving silence as he announced his arrival. As he walked down the hallway, the eerie stillness grew more pronounced. It was too quiet, and something about it gnawed at him. Then, without warning, from a hidden corner of the room, a figure lunged at him. A baseball bat, gripped tightly by one of the thugs, swung down with brutal force, aimed directly at the son's head. His mother watched in agony, and her eyes wide open, she muffled screaming and filling her throat as she braced for the worst. But in a stunning turn, the son moved with lightning speed, blocking the attack just in time. In one swift motion, he straightened up, his expression hardening with resolve. A powerful punch flew from his fist, striking the attacker with such force that the thug was sent sprawling to the floor, unconscious. For a moment, stunned silence gripped the room. Even the gang leader, previously brimming with a cruel confidence, was left speechless. His eyes widened in disbelief. His arrogant smirk faltered as his voice cracked as he was stammered, unable to comprehend what he had just witnessed, and the son stood tall, exuding a quiet but unmistakable strength, like a warrior ready for battle. The leader quickly snapped out of his shock, rage replacing his disbelief. He barked an order to his men, his voice sharp with desperation. His command rang out like a death sentence. They were to kill the boy. Weapons raised, the thugs rushed forward, eager to follow their leader's order. But the son was quicker than them, his body moving like a well-trained fighter, and with ease he dodged their wild and reckless swings, each attack missing its mark by mere inches. His reflections were sharp, and he countered their blows with a calculated precision. Every punch and kick he delivered landed with lethal force, sending one thug after the other crashing to the floor. Amidst the chaos, one gang member saw an opening and seized that moment. Sneaking up behind the son, he lifted a stool high above his head and brought it crashing down onto the boy's skull. For a brief, tense moment, everything seemed to freeze. The room held its breath, waiting for him to fall. But instead of collapsing, the son slowly turned, a chilling smile spreading across his face, and then his eyes locked onto the attacker with an unsettling intensity. The thug recoiled in terror as the boy, unfazed by the blow, kicked him aside effortlessly as though the strike had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience. The fear that once belonged to the parents had now shifted. It was the gang who realized that they were no longer in control of this fight, and yeah, they were not the danger. The boss, now completely disoriented and shaken by the unexpected turn of events, fumbled with a knife. His confidence had crumbled and confusion clouded his eyes. He forced a twisted grin onto his face, struggling to maintain his sinister persona, while his gaze flicked toward the father, bound and helpless. His sneer suggested a cruel intent to see the father suffer further. Before he could make a move, the son acted super swiftly. He reached out for the hot iron that had previously been used to torment his family, and with a forceful swing, struck the boss's face. The searing metal made horrifying contact, sending the gang leader crashing backward. His head hit the wall with a sickening thud, and he fell to the floor, writhing in pain and clutching his neck. His cries for help filled the room, a mix of agony and desperation. The boy observed the leader suffering in silence, his expression unreadable. Then, he turned to his parents, who stared at him in shock and disbelief. The air was thick with tension as he walked over to them and untied the ropes that were bound to them. Once his parents were freed, the boy stood tall and addressed them with a voice heavy with the weight of bitter truth, indicating that their impoverished circumstances had forced his hand into violence. As soon as his son collapsed to the floor, his mother's panic erupted. Her scream of Sun Woo pierced through the chaos as she rushed to his side, and the room descended into frantic disorder. The scene shifted to a bustling hospital. The corridors were a chaotic blend of doctors, nurses, and gang members, all scrambling to make sense of the situation. Shouts and questions filled the air, and the receptionist, struggling to maintain her composure, relayed the news with disbelief. The debtor's son, a high school student, had knocked down 10 gangsters, all by himself. Nearby, a man overheard this and stood stunned, his eyes widening in shock at the gravity of the situation. The scene then transitioned to a hospital room where the gang leader, previously left beaten and humiliated by Sun Woo, now lays in bed, seething with fury. His voice, strained in rhapsody, commanded his subordinate with a menacing edge to find and eliminate Sun Woo immediately. The subordinate hesitated before cautiously responding that Sun Woo had also been brought to the hospital. A wicked grin spread across the boss's face as he absorbed the news. The departure of Black Bear meant that the situation was now dire for Sun Woo. The final scene cut to the hospital's reception area, and the boss, brimming with malicious intent, leaned in with unsettling calm and inquired about Sun Woo's room. The receptionist, trembling with nerves, then directed him to room 202. The man charged down the emergency room corridor, his mind racing. He muttered to himself that with Black Bear involved, the outcome was inevitable. Black Bear, being one of their top fighter candidates, could determine if Sun Woo was truly formidable, and he lamented that it was unfortunate for the boy to be caught up in this situation. As he neared room 202, the man slowed his pace and shook his head. A trace of reluctant sympathy crossed his face. He almost felt sorry for the young man inside. In the room, Black Bear towered over Sun Woo, who was still connected to a saline drip, and Black Bear, a hulking figure of muscle and menace, wore a smirk of disdain. He was unimpressed by the fact that he had been summoned for a high school student. Black Bear noted Sun Woo's lack of fear, despite his intimidating presence. Most people would have been trembling by now. Sun Woo, undeterred and calm, removed the saline needle from his arm and stood up. He met Black Bear's gaze with a quiet determination, showing no trace of fear, only a readiness for the challenge ahead. And our boy Sun Woo has infinite aura. The black bear observed the boy with a hint of amusement, and he found it curious that the young man remained unfazed, his fearless demeanor standing out. To Black Bear, this was either a display of nerves of steel or the obliviousness of somebody utterly naive to danger. The boy stood there, unflinching, his eyes locked on Black Bear. Amused by this, the larger man commented internally that the boy would soon learn the meaning of true fear, something akin to the panic one feels when losing Wi-Fi during a crucial game. Suddenly, the boy moved, his punch flying with incredible speed, like a cheetah on a sugar rush. One of the onlookers, a bespectacled observer, noticed just how fast the attack was, comparing it to literally a squirrel on drugs or something. Just kidding, probably not. But the strike was easily intercepted by Black Bear, who caught the blow in his hand, pushing the boy to his knee with sheer force. The boy Kang began bleeding heavily, exhaustion overtaking him like a marathon runner realizing they ran the wrong way. Black Bear remarked inwardly that Kang's movements were predictable, almost like the inevitability of a Monday morning. Then with a calm and menacing tone, Black Bear acknowledged that no matter how reckless or fearless the boy seemed, charging head-on with his eyes wide open would only lead to one outcome. He likened it to a goldfish confronting a shark. Fearless had its limits, and death was the only conclusion for the ones who ignored him. Kang, despite his injuries, rose to his feet once more. Of course, watching him, Black Bear couldn't help but quip to himself, noticing how the boy seemed to bounce back as if there were literal springs on his shoes. Kang, however, was unfazed by the mockery and retorted with a sharp edge, pointing out how much talking the man did for somebody who, in his eyes, had nothing of value, like a parrot with a megaphone, all noise and no substance. Amused by Kang's comeback, Black Bear reflected inwardly that it was the talking that made killing fun, like the satisfaction of popping bubble wrap one layer at a time. Nearby, the bespectacled observer gasped in disbelief, and he hadn't expected the confrontation to turn deadly, and now worried that things had spiraled out of control. He knew this needed to stop before it escalated into something akin to a circus of chaos. Then the real battle finally began. Kang, fueled by every ounce of energy he had left, delivered a powerful kick to Black Bear, as forceful as a kangaroo on a trampoline. The impact left Black Bear's face bruised and distorted, looking as though it had been rearranged like a Picasso painting. And despite the blow, Black Bear was far from defeated. His resilience was legendary, and the bystanders knew about it. One onlooker remarked inwardly that no one had ever heard of the Black Bear being taken down, and for good reason. He was renowned as a physical king across the country, and there was no way somebody like him would fall so easily. After his taunt, Black Bear began to stand, the strain hardly visible on his hulking form. He mused aloud, wondering if anyone truly thought he'd stay down after being hit so hard by a high schooler. To him, that was likely as a cat washing the dishes. Kang charged again, delivering another fierce punch, and the onlooker with glasses couldn't believe what he was seeing, inwardly remarking how absurd the whole situation was and how it had become like seeing a fish ride a bicycle. Without hesitation, guys, Kang mounted Black Bear and unleashed a flurry of punches, one after another, relentless, like a drummer on a caffeine binge. Amidst the assault, Black Bear, still maintaining his composure despite the onslaught, vowed to use his ultimate move against the high schooler. The bespectacled observer's shock deepened as he realized what was going on. Black Bear was about to use his famous bone crusher technique, and he thought to himself that this had gone way too far, comparing the escalating absurdity, and it was very clear to him that things were getting into something more dangerous. Suddenly, the observer rushed into the room, intending to stop the madness. Just as he did, Black Bear grabbed a hold of Kang, attempting to lock him into submission. Yet something was wrong. Black Bear's senses seemed to dull up, and his strength faltered. He couldn't believe it, baffled by the sensation. His full power had been unleashed, but it felt so off for some reason. Kang began to move again, defying all expectations, and Black Bear, now visibly confused, questioned how the boy was still moving, let alone intact. He wondered aloud if Kang's bones were somehow different, perhaps made of rubber, as they withstood the devastating move without any apparent damage. Black Bear, now seething with rage, made another desperate attempt to grab Kang, this time with every ounce of energy he had left. But as he struggled to understand the boy's resilience, confusion just clouded his mind. Why weren't Kang's bones breaking? It was as if the boy possessed some kind of supernatural strength, leaving Black Bear wondering if he was secretly a superhero. Kang, without hesitation, delivered a powerful headbutt and catching Black Bear off guard. Reeling in from the blow, Black Bear mused whether the boy had reinforced his bones with metal or something, given his seemingly invincible strength. And yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with him. The damage from the headbutt was quite severe, but Kang did not stop at all. His relentless attack continued, punch after punch, landing with precision and force, like a woodpecker, just pecking into a tree, I guess, and Black Bear was all bruised and overwhelmed, and he was pretty much helpless against this onslaught. Of course, the guy with glasses just rushed in, attempting to stop what was going on, and he told King to please stop, because Black Bear was already unconscious. He then warned him if things got worse, then cleaning up the mess would be way harder, and yeah, I definitely agree. Quickly, the observer called for help, fabricating a story about a head trauma from a car accident in room 202, building B. The urgency of the situation was clear. Kang, however, was suspicious. He glared at the observer and questioned his intentions, wondering if he was part of Black Bear's gang or just another bystander with a misguided hero complex. The observer shrugged off the accusation, casually admitting that he had thought about sticking around like a sidekick in a comic book if things got more intense. King, incredulous, scoffed at the absurdity of what he said, asking if this guy was actually out of his mind. And of course, we are seeing the apartment being cleaned up, and people gathered around. The job was nearly done, and somebody confirmed it was time to wrap things up as the day went on. The guy watching was still unsure of Black Bear's condition, and he really wondered if that man would stay unconscious for too long, or if he might spring back to life like a zombie. But anyway, the cleanup was commenced. It was pretty easy and efficient, and as the chaos subsided, the bespectacled man, or this guy, just handed over his card, and he suggested a proposition to our MC. He offered him a chance to fight for the one he served, comparing it to a knight's loyalty to his king. Of course, our MC was like, bro, are you kidding me? Like, definitely not. His reply was so cold and dismissive, and it pretty much made him understand that, money wasn't really a big deal to him. He then rejected the proposal, and he began to leave, and his demeanor was kind of that of a Sigma male or a lone wolf, and yeah, I know you guys might cringe at that. Nonetheless, he was annoyed at the persistence, and King inwardly wondered what kind of scam this was. He thought that this guy was like some sort of con artist in disguise, and the guy with glasses was just like, you know what? It's whatever, people's thoughts can change anytime. Afterward, it then switches to our MC. He was reeling from the overwhelming weight of his shattered reality. He then stumbles into the washroom, hands trembling, as he desperately splashes cold water onto his face. The mirror reveals a broken man standing on the edge of despair, and he mumbles under his breath, bitterly, reflecting on how his life has unraveled. Once he used to have dreams, lofty aspirations of success and peace, but now they just mock him from a distance, and remnants of a time when hope still lingered. The crushing weight, of course, bears down on him, and he thought that he might have to, eliminate himself now. In the midst of all this despair, the door suddenly opened. His father stepped in, and his stern gaze cut through the fog of self-loathing. The room then grew tense as his father's voice breaks the silence, demanding to know why his son is wallowing in here, submerged in despair. There's a sharpness in his tone, an unspoken layer of frustration that has simmered over the years, fueled by unfulfilled expectations. The son, his emotions raw, turns to his father, and the frustration in his heart started to boil. He questioned whether or not his father even knows the source of his suffering, whether he understands the depth of pain that has been inside him for so long. Memories flooded back as soon as his son recounts his father's once promising boxing career, a story filled with potential that ended up in disaster. His father was a rising star, receiving countless offers to elevate his career, but each opportunity was squandered. Of course, the father's choices had spiraled out of control, and it dragged the family into debt as he stubbornly clung to the dream of preserving his legacy. Instead of achieving glory, he sank further, all while dreaming of opening a grand local boxing gym that would never come to be. The son's anger seethes as he accuses his father of neglecting him and his ailing mother, choosing instead to chase after a lost dream that had long since turned into a nightmare. The weight of his accusations hung in the air, heavy with years of pent-up resentment. His father, stunned into silence, stands there, caught off guard by the outpouring of his son's anger. The torrent of words continues, each one a reminder of the failures that the family has, overcome across the years, and they have also gone into, and so it still needs to heal, since these are deep wounds. As Kang's emotional outburst echoes through the air, the gang members lurking nearby listen with grim satisfaction. His rant, filled with anguish and resentment, only serves to fuel their twisted delight, relishing the unraveling of a man caught in his own despair. Suddenly, a sharp, searing pain grips Kang's head. It's the result of not sleeping a lot and a lot of stress, and it begins to grow, the throbbing, and it becomes unbearable until he collapses to the floor. And of course, he's in anger and hopelessness, and this is really a bad thing to experience. Just as the weight of these memories threaten to consume him, he is jolted back into reality. Kang awakens in a hospital room, disoriented and confused. The sterile white walls, the hum of machines, and the soft murmurs of nearby patients ground him, but the fog of pain and despair lingers around him and in the edges of his consciousness. He doesn't even recognize where he is, and he doesn't know what the future can even hold. He was still groggy and disoriented, and he really wondered how did he end up in this unfamiliar hospital room. His mind began to race with, possibilities and theories, and he tried to piece together what happened. How long had he actually been away? It felt like a distant world. It felt so surreal, and he really wondered if it were slipping away from him. He then grabbed his phone, and he found out that there was a message from his father. It was a cryptic filled with hints about revealing everything later that night, and suspicious clawed at him. What could his father be hiding? Fear then began to seep in, and there had to be something big, something he wasn't prepared to face. Unable to shake this unease, he then called his dad, and the voice on the other end was steady, but the words carried a heavy weight. His father told him to stay put, urging him not to come home because of some dangers there. He was obviously confused and perplexed, and the king decided to, just listen to his father explain what was going on, and his father was not in the hospital for, lots of safety reasons. Nonetheless, there was no clarity and only more questions for our MC. When he asked about his mother, his father mentioned that she was safe for now, staying at a police station or a police-protected hotel, and the urgency in his father's voice was undeniable, insisting that he remain inside and don't go out. The call then ended abruptly, but Kang was left even more troubled than before, and he really wondered what was wrong with his dad. He was overwhelmed, and guilt literally flooded his thoughts. He blamed himself, he blamed the others for this mess and chaos. Just at that moment when he was thinking, his phone rang again. This time, the news was absolutely devastating. His father was in a coma. Panic surged through his body, and without a second thought, he rushed to the hospital. Once there, the details unraveled, leaving him absolutely stunned. His father had been in a severe accident of the construction site, and the operation and surgery would cost 100 million won. The numbers echoed in his mind, and they were almost incomprehensible. Fear, helplessness, and despair tangled within him, and he felt himself sinking under the weight. In his desperation, a memory flashed, that mysterious card. It had seemed insignificant before, but now this might be his only way out. He then raced to room 202. He opened the door quickly, only to find the trash can empty. The card was gone. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut, and he collapsed on the floor, consumed by hopelessness. However, there was a reflection of his own situation there, and he didn't really know where to go. But just when it seemed like all hope was gone, the same enigmatic man from earlier with glasses appeared on the doorway. He asked if Kang was still searching for the card, and before Kang could respond, another man joined them, probing if he had reconsidered their offer. Despair then clouded Kang's judgment as he listened. In a low voice, he asked about the offer, and the man smiled, sensing that Kang's growing his desperation for this. He proposed a deal. If Kang could win, he would receive 10 million. If he lost, there was no real loss, and they would still profit from his efforts. It was a high-stakes proposition, and then Kang, teetering on the brink of despair, felt his curiosity piqued. The overwhelming pressure of his situation truly hardened his resolve. What else choice did he have? He is now discussing with the man, and it seemed like the name of this thing is called the Fighting Ward. Of course, he is quite interested by this, and the man explains it's pretty much a secret underground tournament of some sorts, where the best fighters are there. They even use drugs from the hospital actually to compete. Our MC says doping. I don't even do that kind of stuff. And we see oh my gosh, there is a velvet case right here of a bunch of different steroids or something, and this is for performance enhancing. He mentions that this isn't a simple doping drug. It's a thing that can make an old man even stronger than he was in his prime. And wow, I'm guessing these are pretty, illegal. He mentions it's not mandatory, but it is optional. And he also, of course, our MC Wonders says, what the heck are you and who are you to have this stuff? He mentions, I'm Kim Min-seok, a scout for a certain VIP who participates in the fighting ward. Our MC is quite curious what a scout is, and he pretty much explains, don't worry about that, it's not as important, and we'll get to the main details in the future. He then says there hasn't been a single fighter who has won without doping, and our MC says I don't want to do it. He mentions that if you do doping, then you'll definitely have a higher chance of winning. And of course, this guy also says in his head, our MC isn't listening to me at all, what should I do? He says if you make it to the top 20, you'll get to choose a sponsor, and then you can choose the VIP I present as your sponsor, and that's an easy way to victory, and I feel like this guy is sugarcoating it away too much. RMC says whatever, and he's blinded by the need for money, saying, come on, that's all I need, the money, let's get this over with. And of course he says there's a problem. You only get paid through the tournament. And our MC slams on the desk as he stands up, saying, then why the heck should I work with you? The old man, I don't even know how old this guy is, but the man with glasses, Kim, says, Relax, relax, you need money for your parents' surgery, correct? Our MC wonders how he knows that. He says, as long as you fight for my boss, we're gonna cover everything. And it seems like he's super serious here. He says we will even keep the debt collectors at bay. He wonders how this can be possible, and suddenly he gets a call from his mom. He wonders if something is wrong, and she then tells him, I heard you paid for your dad's hospital fees, and they also sent bodyguards as well. And of course he looks at Kim, like what the heck, is this really true? Kim also mentions that there is a safe home, and wow, this is definitely going to be a upgrade for our MC. He mentions we don't really have any options besides you, Kang Sen-yu, and so our MC just says, yep, they're the ones I sent. Just do as they say. I'll come back soon. Of course, Amanda's worried, but he says I'll just call later. And it seems like he knows that he's not going to see her for a while. He then asks what is at stake for the prize to be 10 billion. He mentions that 10 billion is just a base prize. He says depending on how much people bet on you, the fighter, it can obviously increase. And yeah, I'm pretty sure rich people are going to start gambling on this stuff or betting. Our MC mentions that this is kind of insane, but it is actually impossible because somebody actually took home 15 billion won. And he says the reason why it's so high is because a lot of contestants either become disabled or even lose their lives. And so only 10% of contestants from the previous tournament walked out unharmed, and our MC says, how can so many people die and keep this a secret? He says that's why so many die, is because the secret is well kept. And of course he points to the place, the signature box, saying, once you sign this, the first thing we do is create a death alibi. And our MC says, wait, a death alibi? No way. And he says we can obviously fake a death and disappearances, and see, that's definitely what's going to happen. He pretty much explains, you know what, it's not hard to paint you as a drug addict. Do you think that a crazy person like you doesn't belong to the tournament? He then smiles crazily, saying, don't worry, you'd be pronounced dead long before you could report this, and so it seems like this guy is definitely serious. He says, Kang Seon-woo, this is your entire choice, and please, look at this contract right here and sign it. He then mentions, most people take a few days, but oh, it seems like he says he's going to do it right now as he grabs onto it, and this guy gives a smile, and this low-key reminds me of, Greatest Estate Developer, and you guys already know what I'm talking about. Right behind him, we see a nurse, wait, what? We see a nurse come up behind him, and she stabs him in the neck with a needle or a syringe, and it seems like he begins to lose his sight, and of course Kim, the VIP guy, just says, it's just anesthesia, and we're going to move you to the arena so nobody knows where it actually is. He then says, remember, you'll be taken care of while you're in the tournament, so don't worry, you need to win to solve your problems, and wow, this really is just abduction. He then opens up his eyes wondering if he is dead, and he sees one of the people or the hospital workers over him, and they are pushing him towards this sort of entrance. He's literally on a moving table or a moving bed, and he says, bro, are you really kidding me right now? And the guy explains, you'll soon find out where this is. This is hell, and oh my gosh, this isn't gonna go well. And that just rhymed. It is now a beautiful morning as you see the Twin Towers here, probably Korean version, and this is Cha Yeon-woo, which is the vice chief of the hosting group. This guy looks pretty sad and it looks like he needs some sleep. He thinks, do you think it really makes sense that a high schooler is going to be a representative for the tournament? Of course, we see Kim mentioning it might be a funny or laughable idea, but still, trust me on this. He says, why? Just why? He says we need the others to underestimate us so that we can get even better in this company and have a higher position. And so he then tells him, so you're saying the student can bring down Hyung Nim? And he is referring to, of course, the president of the company or the chief of the company. Kim then goes a bit crazy, saying his condition is beyond belief. His bones weren't damaged at all. Our MC is about to get stepped on by this guy who, probably is a gangster, and this guy with an AK-47 says, step the heck back. This guy mentions, I was just joking, and there's a drone watching here, and they're surveilling everything. Our MC wakes up as a drone mentions it, and he wonders what this is. He then looks at his hand saying, what's with this uniform? It seems like the first random match will begin, and pretty much all you have to do is fight each other, and whoever wins will be deemed suitable for the actual arena. And we then see the doping gun right here, and the type of doping will be kind of random, and so VIPs watching the broadcast can now place their bets on our MC or on the opponent. The guy with the green slick back hair then picks up the doping gun, and it seems like he begins to use it, and he begins to rattle and shake. And look at this guy's face. You know what this really reminds me of, guys? I just remembered. This reminds me of Cyberpunk. Those cyber implants that really give you a boost but mess you up. Our MC is about to get double kicked right here by this guy, and it seems like he hits the wall and there's a big dent in the wall. Our MC crouches barely, and he mentions that this guy is an absolute monster. The guy is in a sort of a sumo position. Actually, he looks more of like Spider-Man, and of course our MC also mentions his muscles got way more enhanced, and he was so thin just a while ago. The guy gives a menacing look at our MC, saying, "I would love to smash all those guys who used to mock me as a thin loser." He then steps in front of our MC and he says, "I want to eliminate this little brat to make it fun." But our MC punches him in the face, and he wonders if he's messing with him because, it felt kind of light, and he says, "You're really looking down on me, aren't you?" Our MC just says, "Really? This guy's just cooked." Anyway, our MC is about to get hit once again, and he actually gets hit on the head to the ground, and he spits out blood, and his whole body literally turns, and he gets uppercutted up into the air, and he's about to get RKO'd as his leg is grabbed onto, and he gets smashed into the ground, and we see his entire face is bloody and bruisey. The guy gives a really creepy smile like the one from Solo Leveling, and he then squats and jumps up into the air like 10 meters, saying, "Let's see. Everyone who looked down on me, let's see where they are now." He says, "I'm going to become the king," as he steps on our MC, and please don't tell me our MC has a kink for getting stepped on, and I'm just kidding, guys. Anyway, it seems like he barely manages to hit our MC's face, and he only hits the chest, and we get a flashback to, of course, Kim, and he's talking to the Vice Chief. He mentions that our MC's bone density is 10 times that of a normal person, and so that's not of a human, and our MC is unaffected as he grabs onto the man's foot, and he kicks him just like that. Oh wow, our MC really just did that. He then begins to use capoeira, and he's literally just, oh my, our MC is like a snake. He escaped from the man's grasp, and this guy says, "How is this guy so strong without doping?" Our MC mentions that his stamina isn't that good right here, and so he needs to definitely hit his face before he gets grabbed once again. He gets into a boxing position, he then crouches under this guy's attack, and boom, one shot to the face and he gets hit, and another shot to the face, and this guy is starting to look like a JoJo character, and his movements are getting kind of zesty. Our MC is about to land his final blow, but both of his hands are then grabbed by this guy, and he says, "You got me so excited. You know what? I let you hit me on purpose, actually." Our MC is still in his fighting stance, and it seems like our MC just floats up and kicks him in the head, and yeah, look at this guy's face. He probably needs to get a new veneers or something. He's crawling on the ground, wondering that his body can't even be lifted. He then sees our MC's doping gun, and he grabs it. Our MC mentions that he definitely cannot do this because of course he's going to die if this guy gets a second doping thing. And this guy then jumps up and hits our MC right in the torso as our MC spits out blood, and he then throws him to the ground. And it seems like he tells the drone to not watch this because it's not over yet. He is then about to chokehold our MC, and it seems like our MC is going to be in a very padded position. Yep, it seems like he is about to die as he calls out to his dad, and then we see some blood splatter. We then see our MC and the man on the floor, and there is a lot of blood on the ground. We see that the game is over due to player death, and no! Of course, the chief wonders what happened, and Kim says it was an overdose of doping. He says the chances of surviving 2 dopings is less than 0.5, and yeah, that man could not survive it, and it seems like our MC has won this battle. The Vice Chief then mentions the opponent chose to die on his own, and Kim says his body is unusually strange. Of course, the Vice Chief then says, "So you're telling me that his bones don't break easily? You know well that this place is filled with even crazier monsters, right?" He mentions that they can enhance muscles, organs, hormones, anything, except for one thing. Kim says bones, and so there should be a special secret behind this. Of course, he wonders what's the next step then. Our MC says since he passed a doping test round, he'll receive urgent treatment, and then he'll fight the other monsters. And look at our MC, guys, he's completely out of it. I don't even know if he has like 5% health left. And anyway, we're back at the training room or the treatment ward, and he again gets a flashback to what happened. He says he just wanted to knock the guy down, and he was the one who almost died. And of course, he gets a flashback of his dad as well. And look at our MC right here. He's thinking of so much stuff. He's about to lose it, guys, I guarantee. He looks at the drone in the air, and it explains that you need to move to the lobby right now, and it seems like that's where the other players are gathered. The guy that helped him mentions, as long as you follow the guide, you'll be fine. And so he follows the drone, and yep, this is about to be crazy. He sees a hole in the wall, wondering what exactly is this place. He says, is this some sort of underground cafe or cave? And of course, our MC mentions that he wanted to call his mom before he entered here, but you know what? All he has to do is win and survive, and that's all he has to do to see his parents back again. Our MC is kind of mad as well because people saw him as a monster in the real world, but here he's pretty much a punk, and he wonders how many more and worse monsters are here as well. The door then opens and he sees thousands of drones here, and it seems like every single player has entered, and look at the drones here, they're I'm guessing they're pretty much equivalent to the number of players, and this is kind of crazy. Look at these guys. These guys are ripped and jacked and sumo wrestlers, and they have scars, and these guys look scary. Our MC says that he really needs to stay under the radar until the official match starts, and somebody says, "Look at this kid. Do you think you should play with Big Bro for a bit?" Our MC mentions that he was still in uniform, and so, he's obviously going to get bullied and trampled on, as his other people then begin to discuss. Look at that high school kid. He hasn't even doped yet. And of course, this guy is probably a rich person who wanted to be some spectacle. And then, just at that second, somebody bumps into the guys talking trash. And it is a guy from earlier that wanted to play with their MC. And he says, when somebody asks if you want to play, you should answer. He then grabs our MC's head, and our MC gets furious, and he is about to punch this guy right in the face. And yep, this guy definitely made a wrong move. But just at that moment, somebody slaps the guy's hand on our MC's head, and he says, "Stop it." And oh my gosh, what is Tony Stark doing here? Anyway, the other guy also begins to crush this old man's head, or Tony Stark's hand. And of course, he says this guy is just a young student, let him go. And it seems like he activated doping on his arm, and so he was unaffected. He's getting ready to punch this guy, and the guy says, "You're gonna protect a kid like that?" And they are about to clash fists, and of course we hear a big shockwave. And the guy he just got shot by the drone, and it seems like that big guy was eliminated because he was about to inflict harm onto other people outside of the matches. As the drones say, whoever does this will be executed immediately. And obviously, guys, I would be surprised too. There was no warning, and that guy just got eliminated. And it seems like there was a figure on the TV, and now it is a time for the briefing to begin. The guy explains that the doping test round is just an event where as long as you survive, there are no eliminations, but from now on, losing any round means elimination from the game. He explains that you're all here for the grand prize of 10 billion won, and everybody cheers going crazy. And our MC mentions, "My whole family could live like humans for once," and then of course he clenches his fist. However, only one person can win the prize, but don't be disappointed, the man says, a mysterious man with red eyes. The top 16, if you survive, you receive 5% of the game money from the VIPs. And so this guy with the red hair mentions, "I'll sweep up both and get the prize money and the betting money as well." And of course, our MC looks behind him, and it seems like the VIPs are on the drones watching, and they will place their bets on how it's going to end up. He says you need to try and secure as many VIP viewers, and so you're going to rake in a fortune, and I definitely agree. And these two that were, talking crazy earlier, these yappers, pretty much say, I need to be with the strong ones and pull off some big moves, and sadly for that high school kid, I might not even make a single penny from the VIPs. Our MC mentions that finding a room won't be easy. But then Tony Stark just says, "Don't worry too much, bro. I'll make sure you are safe until the official matches begin." And he looks at his arm right here, and it's still shaking a bit from that man's attack. Somebody then walks past him, and he wonders who that could be. Tony Stark then says, "There's a room over there, so come on. Let's go," and there's no competition in that room. He then says, "I don't know this dude's motives, but no matter what I choose, there will be danger, so it's good that he's actually accompanying me." The two men from earlier say, "Sharing the same room must be dangerous, but that just means I'll get a bit of screen time on the popular channel." They then enter this room, and there are three dudes right here. Oh my gosh, these guys look definitely scary. And the man who walked by our MC earlier is here, and it seems like he has blonde hair. He says, "That spot looks really good. Would you please get out of my way?" And this guy is pretty much sitting on the throne, I guess. One of them then mentions, "You see the cameras aren't even on and you close the door." He gets ready to spank him or slap him like it's a slap contest, but this guy uses 2 fingers and he hits him on the neck. And just like that, look at this guy's neck, it gets absolutely twisted. And he wonders, who else wants to greet me? And these guys are definitely scared of him. This man is Han Min-soo. He's only 19 years old, and he uses the Kali Arnis martial arts, and that is a martial arts originated in the Philippines. We then see Kim driving Cha Yun-woo, and Kim tells him that the vice president will team up with Choi Man-chun, the previous tournament champion again. And he says, "Yeah, who the heck could take him anyway? My alternative is just a high schooler." Of course, we then see Kim mention, if Kang Sun-woo can make the top 16, he'll be able to undergo the second doping round, and that's really good. He smiles, saying his bones are already 10 times stronger. Imagine if he uses the doping, he'll literally become way too OP, and this guy gets crazy on the possibility. Of course, he then says, "You know what, we need to keep him on our side though. I'm worried other VIPs will really want to snatch him away." Kim says, "Don't worry, I have a deal with him." He mentions that the members of the 5-person room that Kang Sun-woo entered, they're the fighters with the lowest viewership. Oh, they have the lowest viewership. And of course, Cha Yun-woo is like, wait, What is that supposed to mean? As we see Tony Stark and her MC saying it won't be easy to gain viewership because the audience will fight to flockers they think will win, and this is one of the only female fighters and her chances of winning is low. And this is Amanda Groach, and she uses capoeira, and she also does jujutsu, and she's 23. We then see a smaller fighter in the competition is Kim Min-ho, and this guy uses boxing, and this guy looks super chill, by the way. We see Menon, and he is 28. And I don't know why this guy is trying to lick his elbow. Anyway, our MC is just looking at this spectacle like, what the heck is going on? And even Tony Stark is like, bro, are you kidding me? He then says that the guide has started filming and he needs to draw the VIP's attention in the room to collect some betting money. And so he then uses a doping inside one of his arms and he does a one-arm handstand and he starts to do handstand push-ups. And our MC mentions, wow, that doesn't seem like it'll do the trick. But then we see the lady also do one finger into the ground as she puts it inside. And then, she does the exact same thing. And these guys are going crazy. We then see the boxer and he says, showing off strength is for fools. And he then runs super quickly past our MC. And dang, this guy is way too fast. And then we see the elbow guy and he's just trying to lick his elbow. And I don't know what's going on here. Anyway, we then see them going crazy. They're all trying to get attention, and our MC is confused, saying, why do I feel so stupid doing this? He then notices something, and it seems like the TV is turned on, and we hear the 124-person tournament bracket is now complete. As we see, of course, it is a 1v1 battles that are definitely lined up. Our MC is going up a guy named Kai, and he has an X on his head, and he looks super menacing compared to a high school student. We then see a skyscraper here, and we then see it is Cha Yeon-woo saying, is that Kai guy really that good? Kim then tells him that he hasn't lost since his days as a Letway fighter, and Letway is a martial arts that originated in Myanmar. He says, what exactly is that? He says it is a Burmese martial art, so it's kind of similar to Thai in a lot of aspects. However, there are some differences that make it even more brutal and causes injuries, and so this might hurt our MC. And Cha then says, isn't Muay Thai already one of the few dangerous ones? How about an elbow and a knee strike? Do they allow that? He says, Kim, with a very serious face, they allow way more than that. You can do headbutts as well. And if somebody strikes the opponent's face with their forehead, they can cause a massive injury. And that's why it's banned in most fighting tournaments. And yeah, that's definitely one of the most dangerous martial arts guys. He says you can also attack the back of the head and the spine. Oh, that is so brutal. He mentions that Kai most likely had a real experience, and after his professional career, he was definitely scouted by an organization to fight there. And so he says it seems like fighting in the ring wasn't enough to satisfy him. Kim then says that caught the attention of the organization because he wanted to fight in street battles and stuff. And so Cha is like, can Kang Seon-woo really go up against somebody like him? Kim says, you know what? We'll have to see for ourselves because he's never trained or fought against somebody who did martial arts. We then see Kai right here, and look at this guy, guys. I'm not gonna lie, he looks super menacing. We are in the 5-person room, the fighting ward, and it seems like our MC gets out of his space pod or whatever, the recovery pod. He wonders how long he's been sleeping, and he says, wait a second, why does my body feel so light? He says it's not only light, but he feels way stronger than before. He mentions that when he woke up against Black Bear, he had the same feeling as well. It's like he's gotten stronger, and it seems like fighting actually gets him in a better position because he is growing. But then Tony Stark then says no need to be surprised. If muscles pushed to the limit recover without permanent damage, you become stronger, and it becomes way stronger than before. And I just find it funny that we're literally calling this dude Tony Stark. Nonetheless, he then mentions you've probably never pushed yourself to the limit, and that's the reason why. He says, yeah, back then I fought Black Bear, I didn't even know how I pushed myself to the limit. And then Tony Stark says, maybe you got hit with some kind of recovery doping since you recovered so fast. Our MC just ignores what he says, and he says, wait a second, I've been curious since yesterday. Why did you risk your life trying to help me? He then says, you remind me of my son as they stand across of each other. He says that I would have been a better father, but I've gotten into so much debts with the shark loans or the loan sharks. And he says, you're here because you need to pay off debt. He says, yeah, I need to pay that off first. And when I saw you alone, I couldn't help but think of the son I neglected. And his story is kind of similar to our MC, except our MC's, his father isn't the one in the arena. He says, stop wasting your time. You need to survive and take care of your real son, because if you die, none of that will matter. And Tony Stark just opens his eyes, and he then begins to choke him, jokingly saying, really, if you help me one more time and I'll eat you up alive. And it seems like they're definitely going to grow closer. We then see Menon, and he is very happy. Just kidding, guys. He's super frustrated because he's not in the main arena. He then tells the drone, "I'm the guy who can touch his elbow with his tongue." And what a really good skill. He then begins to chase the drone, as Tony Stark mentions, that the matches with the most viewers take the main arena, and so the rest take the place in the doping round arena. However, he lifts up his glasses like he is a true genius. For all of us except for Menon, well, to be in the main arena means our opponents are some of the most popular monsters. And look at these guys right here. This kind of reminds me of Kengan Ashura if you guys have watched that, or Baki. And these guys definitely are some of the strongest in the world. Our MC says, "Isn't that a good thing?" And of course he says, "Wait, what are you talking about?" He says it's a chance to draw all the VIPs' attention. He then calls our MC crazy, and then Menon mentions this isn't just for gathering viewers. And this guy looks so crazy, and so creepy, by the way. Our MC gets into a fighting stance because he is like so taken aback because he just popped out of nowhere. He says it's where 16 VIPs show up in person, and they're the real powers in the world. He wonders if there will be a scout there, and he says he really needs to hear about his mom. We are now in some old and abandoned warehouse as we see a literal barrel right here on fire. This guy wonders, and it is Cha. "I thought I was heading to the main arena. What is this filthy looking place?" Kim says that this is a secret location that only the organizers know because they probably want to meet at a hidden spot. He says also somebody else joined Kang Son-woo's channel beside us. He wonders if there's somebody snooping, and this is Cha Seong-yeon as they look up into the sky, or to the second floor. She is the youngest daughter of the Hosin group, and she mentions, "I was just interested in the student named Kang Seon-woo, that's all." He then says, "Really? It hasn't even been long since they kicked me out of the company, and now they're following me here like rats?" And of course Kim says, "It's like the young lady has taken a keen interest in the boss." He then turns around to tell Kim, "No, don't say that." And she then says, "That's harsh. I've given up school to help my two brothers with the company." And it seems like she has a lot of power. And she smiles saying, "Thanks to my brother though, I was able to find this very interesting place." And he then says, "Whatever you're plotting, just leave quietly." And we see a drone arrive, and we find out that he's finally going to be led to the main arena, as we see a Rolls Royce Ghost right here, and I'm definitely excited for the first match that's about to go down. Comment down fighter if you guys made it all the way till the end. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in our next match.